Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Exploring the unexplained,
breaking down barriers,
putting the macabre under the microscope,
dissecting the disturbing,
seeking out the sinister,
bringing you the jinkies and the jump scares.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Freaky Friday.
Welcome, guys.
And this week we're going to take a little journey along some very creepy highways and talk about some paranormal things while you are driving.
The highway to hell, you might say. Yes. I did promise Megan that I would sing Highway to Hell, and now
I'm a little disappointed right now.
Yeah, now I'm a little embarrassed. I'm not going to sing it. I might break out into song midway through this episode.
Holding out for that now.
Oh God, I got our hopes up again.
Yeah, there are a lot of stories that have come from people who have, poor souls, who have been out driving from, I think, anywhere in the middle of the day to in the night, in towns, out of towns.
Yeah, no.
And get hammered by weird experiences.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think no matter what part of the world you're from, you've heard some sort of ghost story that's taken place on the road.
Things from apparitional figures walking or running into the road, of oncoming vehicles, phantom vehicles, weird creatures out on the side of the road, paranormal hitchhikers. There are countless tales.
I feel like the hitchhiker thing is a very talked about.
It definitely is. There's a couple of stories around the world of things like that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these things stem from the fact that there are a lot of road accidents, and those are often, I mean, majority of the time, unplanned, you know?
I would hope all the time, actually.
No, but I mean, okay, I'm not going to go into it, but, you know, it's an unexpected death, and it's a very tragic death, and I think that's what sort of leaves a lot of souls behind.
And exactly, if you're on the road traveling, you have an aim and a purpose. You're going somewhere to do something, so it's sort of mid your goal.
Yeah. You've got unfinished business, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think also the reason this is so interesting to me is that I think one of the most well-known South African ghost stories is the Uniondale hitchhiker.
Yes, I've heard a lot about that one.
I think whether you're into the paranormal or not, you've heard of the Uniondale hitchhiker.
Exactly.
But it's almost like I know it is a true story, or it stems from a true story.
No, it is. It's a completely true story.
But it is sort of like an urban legend in a way that there are a lot of different
variations of it. I think it's like that game Broken Telephone. As stories get passed on down the line, things don't always get portrayed in the right way and details differ.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of varies by she was in a car and had a car accident, or she was on a bike and had a bike accident. You know, there's different.
From the tale I know is that it was a couple traveling on the Easter weekend.
Yeah.
And they were in a car accident and about 20 kilometers out of Uniondale, the town. And the woman, Marie Charlotte Roux, I believe her name was, she was sleeping in the back seat of the car. I think it was a Volkswagen. Or I'm not sure, actually. And her fiancé, who was driving, lost control of the car. And I think the car overturned and she was killed instantly. So that's the variation I know.
And he survived the accident, I believe.
As far as I know.
Yeah, so it's a very similar story to what I've heard, but like I said, it does differ from who you ask and what you research. But from what I gathered, she didn't survive the accident, he did.
Yes.
And a lot of people say that she's still hanging around because, you know, they were so in love. And I think they just got engaged or just got married or something.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're just wed.
So she was sort of, you know, they were about to start this journey together, and she was snuffed out just before they could begin this journey of love together. So they say that's why she's still hanging around.
Oh, it's quite a tragic thing to happen.
Yeah.
In any case, and especially at that point in your life.
Yeah. And as far as I know, because I did a lot of research on this topic a couple years ago, and apparently the sightings of her on the side of the road have died down since the passing of her fiancé or husband.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, because he died a couple years ago, as far as I know. And since then, there have been fewer sightings of her.
That's quite heartbreaking, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the same time, it's quite like, you know, they're obviously been reunited.
Reunited, exactly.
So it's kind of nice, but sad at the same time.
No, what I mean is her sticking around all the time, maybe because she just wanted to be with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way it goes is supposedly as you are approaching the town, numerous drivers have reported seeing a girl on the side of the road trying to hitchhike and have her actually climb into the car and chat to them, have a proper conversation with her.
Yeah.
Only to a few miles down, look back and she's suddenly gone.
Yeah.
And I've actually heard a person recount the story of this happening to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's pretty interesting because I've obviously only ever heard it, you know, via the grapevine.
No, I've actually heard somebody recount the story of it happening to him, where he said she was such a lovely girl. It was such a nice conversation. And he looked like they were a little ways down the road, and he looked back, and she was just gone out of the car.
That is so insane. It's really creepy, but I'd love to have an experience like that.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd probably like pull your car over immediately and try and assess what like I would question my sanity, to be honest.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Should not be driving right now.
But I've also heard that the I don't know if it's the police in Uniondale or around there say that they get calls so frequently
Yes.
that it's now just like okay, you know, it's normal. Don't
I
worry
heard
about
that as
it.
well. Even staff at the hotels and things. Also, they would hear people arriving and telling the story, and they said it took a while at first to dawn on them, but eventually they started realizing, oh, it's this supposed paranormal hitchhiker.
But I mean, it's one of those stories that's very similar to a lot of other ones. A lot of, you know, paranormal hitchhiker stories. It's very similar. Like stuff like a lot of people say she's wearing a white dress. You know, it's very sort of reminiscent of like the Lady in White. But then you get other people who say she was wearing blue pants and a brown shirt or whatever, you know?
Yeah. And I do know that the towns, I think, claim to fame because it became such a regular occurrence. They've made that their
thing.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess it just depends.
I'm not gonna lie, when I'm on like road trips and you know you're gonna pass Uniondale, you're like, I keep my eye out.
Really?
I do, every time. Because I mean, obviously I travel from Cape Town to East London a lot, and you pass by Uniondale, so I always got like an eye out.
If you ever have an experience, you have to tell me.
Oh, of course. But yeah, I don't know. Have you had any personal experiences on the road?
Not really. I can't actually think back to anything ever happening to me. I do know something happened to my father, and he would tell me this when I was young. And that was when he was here in Cape Town studying as a student to becoming a medical doctor. He was driving back one night quite late, and he said I think he was coming around a bend. I mean, you just get him started on this. He will explain the road down to a T. He will tell you exactly the turn, exactly the road name.
Yeah.
And he said he was going, and suddenly there was this white mist-like figure in the road coming out of the manhole, which he only saw at the last second. And he went through it before he was able to really react. And he hit brakes after that, thinking, oh my word, he's just killed someone because there was someone there in the road, only to look back and see nothing.
Oh my word.
He said that stayed with him. I mean, I've noticed how much that stayed with him throughout his life. He said there was no mistaking that it was a mist-like figure, a human figure.
Wow.
But for what I found really strange is that the mist was coming out of the manhole.
That's so insane.
So yeah, I know he's had that experience. Can't say. Oh no, there is actually one.
Tell.
I think it's my most terrifying road experience. Unfortunately, don't think I can put it down to anything paranormal. But
is this going where I think it's going?
Where do you think it's going? Oh no. Not even. No, it is not my tragic spider in the car story.
It's a story for another day, but it's my favorite story.
It was one early morning, you know, on a weekend, early in the mornings, nobody's really up. So when you're driving on the roads, it's quite quiet. And I mean, I think this was a year or two ago. And I was on the highway and I took the off ramp. And as I did, I check your mirror, you look behind you, and in the car behind me was a clown.
What?
I'm not even joking. I stared for several moments before I realized, I should be looking at the road. And then I kept checking back, thinking, please don't there actually be a clown driving behind me.
What?
So that's as far as my story can go. But that was terrifying to me. That was absolutely haunting.
So not a paranormal experience, but an absolutely terrifying one.
Exactly.
It's like Bill Skarsgård on his way to audition for It.
I was like, huh? You're on your way to a party? You're very scary looking around.
I have to ask, what time of the morning was this?
I swear it was around 7 or 8 a.m. I did half wonder, I was like, am I still half asleep?
That is crazy.
But that's as far as my stories go, unfortunately. You, on the other hand, I do know have a chilling story to tell.
Yeah, no, I've told you the story before, and it's one of those things where it was such a bizarre experience that I really want to tell people, but at the same time so bizarre that I think people are going to say I'm completely insane. But I have to tell the story.
Please do.
Because I think to this day it's probably the most intense supernatural or paranormal, whatever you want to call it, experience that has happened to me. And I was with people who saw it too.
I think that's always a thing if you have other witnesses as well.
Yeah, so this was probably in about 2012. I was still living in East London at this point, and we'd traveled through to Cape Town for a concert or something. And we were driving back, and it was sort of on one of the really, really rural roads just before you enter East London, probably about an hour or so out of East London. It was starting to get really dark, and my mom was a bit, unsettled about that, because it's of course a rural road. It's dangerous at night. She didn't want to be on the road, but I was with my mom, my godmother, and my friend at the time. And so we were driving, it was dark, having our conversations, and all of a sudden my mom slammed on brakes, and all of us were like, oh my God, what happened? Thinking, some cattle crossing the road or something. And so my friend and I, obviously in the back seat, popped over to look out the window and see what was happening. And in front of our car was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. And I don't even know how to describe it, but it was sort of like a dog. It's the closest thing I can attribute it to. Completely hairless, a bit taller than your average dog, probably about Great Dane sized.
Yeah.
Like I said, completely hairless, fleshy colored.
No. I'm immediately thinking of the werewolf in Harry Potter 3.
Yeah, very similar looking to that. But on all fours. Its body was sort of almost like a whippet, where the back is very arched.
Oh, that just makes it worse.
Yeah. No ears. So no sticky uppy ears or floppy down ears. No
Just
ears. Nothing. And a snout that was sort of between a not long enough like a collie type dog, and not short like a pug, sort of somewhere in between. And it was sort of skulking in front of our car, absolutely scared. And it sort of looked at us and then just sort of slowly ambled out the road.
Oh, no.
And
you were stopped this entire time?
Yeah. And it was one of those moments where it feels like everything just, time just stops. We were all completely silent watching this thing. And I honestly, like I said, the closest thing I can attribute it is a dog, but it was not a dog. It was no animal that I've ever seen. And obviously as it got off the road and into the bush, we were all like, what the hell was that? It's sort of the silence breaks and everyone's like, what? And my mom, in her very diplomatic, calm tone, was like, it's nothing, guys. It was a dog. Let's go. And I'm like, that was not a dog. I was like, it probably just had mange or something. Let's go. Carried on driving. And it stuck with me for so many years.
Just hearing the story, and you've told me it before, and since then it has stuck with me. I didn't
Yeah.
witness this, but just hearing it gives me chills.
But the thing is, this stuck with me, and like I said, at the time, my mom was very much like, don't worry about it, guys, it's nothing. And I brought it up a couple of years later, and I said, do you remember, when we were driving and we saw that weird thing? And she was like, yeah, no, listen, I didn't want to say it at the time, but I don't know what that was. So my mom said that she was very clearly at the time trying to calm us down because she wanted to get home, didn't want us to freak out, but she said she's never seen anything like that. And it's also, to her, one of her most bizarre experiences.
That's crazy. That really, really is.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it could have been something completely normal, like,
I don't know. That doesn't sound normal in any retrospect.
No, I mean, not at all, but like I said, I'm ever the skeptic. But yeah, I will say it's the most bizarre and unexplained thing that's ever happened to me. And I still think about it to this day, and I've done so much research on it.
That's the thing. I can't even relate to what that could possibly be in any kind of, unless maybe werewolf, kind of paranormal urban legend myth. I don't know what to link that to.
I have no idea. Like I said, I've done so much research, and there's nothing that I can find of people having similar experiences.
I think before you've mentioned to me it had an appearance of the rake.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to say, is the closest thing I can say it looked like was the rake, which I believe is like a fictional...
So do I. think it's along the lines of a Slender Man fictional ghost story.
And I mean, obviously because it's fictional, there are a lot of different depictions of it, but that's the closest thing I can say it looked like.
That is scary.
Yeah. So not so much like a ghost story, but very bizarre, crazy, creepy experience.
No, I think that would really stick with me for the rest of my life. I don't know if I would actually ever drive on an open roadway at night again.
Well, again, like I said, with the Uniondale ghost, I'm always like, whenever I drive past, keeping an eye out. Like, every time I'm on that stretch of road again, I'm like, I know I'm never going to see it again, because it was such a strange thing to happen.
Yeah, you never know. That's, I think, the thing with all these encounters. Nobody ever knows. I know truck drivers experience the most bizarre things, and if that's your life and you're constantly on the road through bizarre hours, it's not surprising.
Yeah.
But I can remember this one story of a truck driver wanting to get home sooner than or as quickly as he could after this one trip. So he took a shortcut through this. It was a roadway that led through a bit of a wooded area.
Bad idea already.
Oh, classic horror movie. And he was driving through and didn't experience anything. He was going along fine until he looked back in his one mirror, and from one of the trees that he just passed, he saw, I don't think he specified a gender, so let's just say a figure hanging from the tree.
Oh my word.
Like someone who had been hung. So he freaked out, stopped the car, turned around, looked behind him, got out the car. There was nothing there. He got back into the car, looked in the mirror again, and there it was again.
That is insane.
So there's a lot of that's the thing. I find these highway stories that pop up tend to be like particularly chilling ones.
Yeah, but I think that's the whole thing, is that you're on the road and you're very isolated majority of the time, when it's long distance at least.
Exactly. And if you're between towns, that's all you've got. You've got yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was another. I think a lot of events also get linked to the paranormal. I mean, to the UFO sightings and extraterrestrial things. A lot of people have noticed weird lights in the sky and white, and like these patterns, like lights doing the weirdest patterns in the sky. There's countless tales of that, especially in America, I believe. And I think maybe the closest I've ever experienced might have come to something like that.
Yeah.
We were also driving home one night. It was like, for a second, the top of my eye caught something light up in the sky, and I looked, and I like, to this day I don't know if it was just my eyelid sort of maybe opening and making it disappear in that, but that light thing sort of like disappeared the more I looked at it.
That's so
and it happened
weird.
in a split second. And it's one of these things where you're like, did my eye just malfunction for a second? Yeah, you know, in these moments, you rationalize it, you
Yeah.
put it down to whatever logical explanation you can find, but never really know.
That's super intriguing. Like I said, my experience has stayed with me for years, and I still, I want to know more about it, and, you know, I've obviously researched it
Yeah.
inside and out, but I would love to do, I don't know, like a film about it or something.
Or just to know if anybody else has actually experienced anything the same.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear from people who've maybe had similar experiences and
Like I said, I can't link this to having ever heard anything like this before. I can't even recall any people mentioning anything like this.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Had I experienced it alone, I probably would have, you know, been like, oh, you imagined it.
Yeah.
Obviously tired from all that driving, but I had 3 other people with me who all saw it happen.
And have any of them, aside from your mom, spoken about it later on in life?
Well, I lost contact with the friend that I was with, so I don't have their side of it, and I haven't actually spoken to my godmother about it. Probably something worth talking about.
Definitely on your next little visit.
But yeah, the next time you see my mom, definitely ask her about it and get her take on it. It's super interesting.
I know a lot of people actually have phantom vehicle sightings.
Yes, that's another one that's super common, actually.
And as far as I know, it's often a black vehicle, a black truck. And this is a story that's popped up all over the world, and that I've heard people tell. That's happened to me, where they'll be traveling, also maybe between towns in the middle of the night, and a black truck will come up on the road behind them, always traveling at like an uncomfortable speed behind them, enough to put them on edge, and only to have sort of like it tails them for most of their journey, where one or two people have actually even pulled off over the side of the road so this truck can pass them, only to have nothing past them and nothing be on the road at all.
I actually think they had an episode of Supernatural based on that. It was like in the first season. I remember that.
It's funny because that specific tale has come up with multiple people across the world. I do know that.
So it's actually like a phenomenon.
Yeah, it really is. A black truck behind you on the road that suddenly just disappears.
That's super interesting. But I mean, we've only got a couple minutes left to talk about this stuff. And so I feel like I'm going to wrap up with something that happened to me quite recently that I found really, really strange. It was actually this week. It was the beginning of the week, I believe. And I was traveling the road I take to work every day. It was, you know, peak traffic, so there were cars everywhere. And I was driving, there was a car in front of me, and I noticed a little girl looking at me out the back window.
That always makes me uncomfortable when anybody else in the car next to me or in front of me looks at me.
Like, why are you staring at me?
Exactly.
But I looked away for a second and looked back, and there was no one there. And it was such a quick thing that I sort of thought like, oh, you know, maybe the child ducked down. But I was behind this car for ages.
Never came back up.
And never saw anyone in the back seat again.
Scary, never know.
And I can tell you like exactly what the little girl looked like, but it was so quick. So I don't know, maybe it's not paranormal, but it was really weird.
Well, funny enough, you said something happened to you this week. Same for myself. That was yesterday even.
Oh wow.
Coming back from doing 1 or 2 errands, and I was on the highway, and there was a car holding everybody up. And eventually we all got around it. The car actually moved more into the side of the road. It was traveling so slowly on the highway. And you know, at that point you are worked up and you like just you want to get past them, but you want to see who is this person who is disrupting your day.
Yeah.
So as I finally passed the car and looked to the side to see what kind of person is holding me up, there was no one in the driver's seat.
What?
And I looked several times, and then I was trying to determine was I not seeing something because of a reflection in the window, or I as far as I could see, and I looked at least 3 times while I was passing it, there wasn't no one sitting in that driver's seat, but that car was going.
That is so bizarre.
Maybe someone was trying to pull a prank. Maybe I can't begin to describe that, but that was my little encounter yesterday.
Love how we both had encounters this
in the
week.
same week.
That's so weird. Oh my word. And like incredibly dangerous.
That was my main thing. I was like, how is this working? Whoever's making this prank work, how are you doing it? That's super dangerous.
Wow. It's like really bizarre that you didn't tell me this story already. Like, how have I not heard this really weird story from you?
Because like you said, it's one of those things where it happens, and these things happen so fast, and you don't know afterwards. You're like, was that just me having a moment, or did that really happen?
Yeah.
Is everyone gonna think I'm absolutely mad?
Whether we're mad or not, they're still really bizarre experiences, and they make for really great stories.
They do.
But yeah, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. But next week, we're going to be talking guardian angels, so make sure you tune in and listen to what we have to say about that. Freaky Fridays, hosted by Devin Beatty
And Megan Portnoy, and produced with the generous assistance of Janu Blau.
and Blended Podcasts.
Brought to you by Blended Audio.